Let's bring in the Treasurer now, Josh Frydenberg. He is at a pre-poll booth where he's basically slept for the last couple of weeks, I reckon. Let's talk about the economy, Josh Frydenberg. Everyone's got an eye on it. Now, you keep on talking about creating jobs, which is most welcome because it's a sign of growing the economy. But what are you doing about getting more workers for businesses that are desperate for them and cannot find them?
Well, we put more than $3.5 billion in the budget, Laura, to create 800,000 new training places. As you know, we've put incentives for apprentices to put themselves through an apprenticeship with $5,000 payments, but $15,000 payments to the employers who take them on. And we've now seen a record 220,000 Australians in a trade apprenticeship. We're obviously investing in manufacturing as well, creating jobs there, a $120 billion infrastructure pipeline. But it's important. It's important that you recognise that 3.9% unemployment rate is not just the lowest it's been in nearly 50 years, but it's in the face of the biggest economic shock since the Great Depression. Treasury came to me early on in the pandemic and said, Treasurer, the unemployment rate could reach as high as 15%. That would be more than 2 million Australians unemployed. Instead of the experience that Australia saw in the 80s and the 90s where unemployment was elevated for up to a decade, this time round we've actually seen the unemployment rate fall below where it was going into the pandemic, something other countries have not seen. And I've heard it firsthand here on the booth from so many small business owners, from so many workers who've come up and just said thank you for that economic support during our time of need. It helped save our business, it helped keep us in the job. And now we're starting to see that extraordinary recovery across Australia.
Now, what about savings? Because we are headed towards $1 trillion debt. The only savings the government is talking about this election seems to be from the public service. Does that show you're out of ideas?
Well, what we've done is more than offset the new spending promises we made in the election campaign. But importantly, we did see in the budget just over 4 weeks ago an improvement of more than $100 billion in the budget bottom line. This was the fastest and the strongest improvement in the budget bottom line in more than 70 years. And we actually have seen deficits more than halve as a share of the economy over the forward estimates, and then more than halve again over the medium term. We're seeing debt as a share of the economy, Laura, peak 4 years earlier and more than 5 percentage points lower than was otherwise the case.
Yeah.
We haven't baked in to the budget bottom line high commodity prices like Labor did when they were last in office, and we're banking the dividend of having more people in work and fewer people on welfare. That's a very different approach to Labor, because even by their own numbers yesterday, every year deficits will be higher, debt will be higher and taxes will be higher. It's a very clear contrast in our strong economic management and Labor, which will deliver a weaker economy.
Well, it's $7 billion more over the forward estimates. I mean, you're the Treasurer, you know that that's not a huge amount over a 4-year period.
And your experience too, and you know that they've committed to more than $50 billion in off-balance sheet
How much do you have off budget?
And so,
how much spending do you have off budget?
well, it's all there in the budget, what we've announced. What we do have is offsetting that full just over $2 billion of new spending that we promised in the campaign. Programs like supporting people with diabetes, getting more people onto the concession card, making sure that the PBS co-payments. You see, we've fully offset and funded our increased spending through this campaign. And we put in the budget all our additional spending, as well as cost of living relief. The Labor Party, on the other hand, have not done that. And we know that they've got more than $300 billion, Laura, of what we call policy platform commitments that they have. So they're promising a budget after the election. It's only fair to the Australian people that they know what's in that budget before the election.
All right, let's talk about what's happening right now. The aged care system is in crisis. Veterans can't get the help that they need. You had to pay back billions because of robo-debt this term. I'm just wondering how cutting the public service even further is going to help those things.
Well, this is basically putting to the bottom line the efficiencies that can be found in the public service, and it's going to be up to the secretaries of the departments who are best placed to find those efficiencies. We're actually seeing the spending on services go up to record levels, both for education and health. And as you know, Laura, we put in successive budgets increased spending into aged care with more than $19 billion. So respite services for carers,
Sure.
extra
Can I
$10
just,
a day
in all
per
seriousness,
resident.
And I know Labor has raised this issue, but when you're putting cuts to the public service and you do leave it up to the department chiefs to find these efficiencies, don't you get things like robo-debt? And haven't you learned from that mistake?
It's quite the contrary. What we're seeking to do here is to ensure that the taxpayer gets the benefit of the efficiencies that can be found within those departments. But actually the funding on programs continues to go up. And you know that on our watch, we have seen NDIS now fully support 500,000 people, about half of whom have received support for the first time.
And they're drowning in paperwork.
You've seen on our watch.
Are they not?
But you've seen on our... what we're always seeking to do is get the best possible service to as many people in need as possible. But what we've also done on our watch is put in women's budget statements that have seen record spending on women's safety.
Okay, let's talk
we've
about
also
women.
put in place record spending on mental health.
Because we just heard from Tanya Plibersek on this. You say you believe in getting women back to work. I know more women are in work. The data showed that yesterday. The gender pay gap is closing. But your own childcare policy penalises university-educated women who's dared to go out and get an above-average wage.
Well, let me put a few facts on the table. Firstly, there's never been more women in work than there is today. And we've seen 1.1 million more women in work today than compared to under Labor. As you rightly pointed out, the gender pay gap has narrowed under us. And we've also seen female workforce participation increase, and female unemployment is now at its lowest level since 1974.
Sure.
So that's all occurred on our watch. Now, with respect to childcare, as you would be aware, in last year's budget, I put $1.8 billion of additional funding into childcare, focusing on families with 2 or more children in childcare.
Yep.
Now, what Treasury told me is that will provide an extra 300,000 hours of work into the economy each week, and about 40,000 people could work an extra day a week as possible as a result of those policies. So we're actually spending a record amount on childcare. And what we've done is we've focused most recently on those families with 2 or more children in childcare, where they can now make that choice as a family to work and get supported with their kids in childcare.
Treasurer, you have done nothing to bring down the cost of childcare. What your subsidies actually do, and Labor's as well, is yes, subsidise those people at the lower end, but you've done nothing to cap the cost. So people without subsidies are actually paying more. Back to my question, your policy actually penalises university-educated women who are earning an above-average wage. I mean, if you're a woman watching this program this morning and you want to have kids and you want to have it all, perhaps, it's not entirely aspirational, this policy. You still see it as welfare, not productivity.
Well, our program is very targeted, and as I said, we've got record amounts of spending and funding going into childcare, more than $11 billion a year, and it's based on boosting female workforce participation. Again, don't look at what Labor says, look what Labor does. And female unemployment today is lower under us than it was under Labor. All
right, now, you're on pre-poll. Has anyone told you that they're not going to vote for you, Josh Frydenberg, and what have you said to them?
Sorry, can you repeat that? There was just a car that came past.
Oh, no, we don't mind that. It's very busy there. I said you've been on pre-poll for weeks. Are people telling you they're not going to vote for you, or they're being very polite? What's going on there?
Well, it's a fact of the matter that you don't get every vote on pre-poll, but what I have been encouraged by is the positive response that I've had, and many stories of people thanking me for supporting Victoria with record support on a per capita basis to Victoria through the pandemic because of their long lockdowns, as well as the work that we've done to provide 30,000 people in Kooyong with JobKeeper, 7,000 businesses in Kooyong with the cash flow boost, and most recently around 8,000 pensioners getting the $250 payments to ease the cost of living. People recognise, Laura, that the coalition, the people recognise, Laura, that the coalition has delivered a strong economy as we promised, and that we have delivered lower taxes as we've promised, and we've delivered more jobs as we've promised, and we've got the plan to create more jobs and more small businesses. And it's not the time to risk the economy with a weak Labor leader. It's not the time to risk the economy with a hung parliament and these so-called independents.
Look, this might be a little bit of troublemaking, but I've just got a text message as we've been speaking this morning from a Liberal source that said that you're so worried about losing your seat that you've already started to put the feelers out for another seat. Is that true?
No, absolutely not.
Well, I've just been told that your plan
troublemaking.
B is the seat of Aston.
Well, my plan A is winning my seat of Kooyong. That's just absolute. That's absolutely scuttlebutt by you, and you know, as well as anyone, how hard I work in my own seat.
Not by
you
me.
know how hard I work in my own seat.
Absolutely not by me. I tell you. So, have you or anyone else on your behalf reached out and started having conversations about the seat of Aston, which Alan Tudge holds, doesn't he?
Absolutely not. My focus is on my own seat, and my focus is on winning it. And I have to say I'm very encouraged by what I've seen and heard on pre-poll. And you know, Laura, better than anyone, how hard I've worked in my local community, how I've been received by my local community, the work that I've done as Treasurer, and the work that I'm hoping to do.
So, have I been sold a pup here, live on air? You're not fibbing to me?
You've been sold many a pup, including this one.
Many? Gosh, that's rough. I'll take this one. Josh Frydenberg, thanks so much. Long day on pre-poll for you. See you soon.
Thank you.